Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Politically Incorrect Knitters. I am Deplorable Knitter. I'm joined this week, as always, by the fabulous Ann Pinkava. Hi, Ann.
Hello.
And we have a really special guest this week. We are also joined. We're also joined by Devin Ventry from Knitty McPurly. Hi, Devin.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, and before we get started, this episode is sponsored by Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. You can check out her beautiful yarn selection at chickenladyfiberarts.com. And with our promo code PIKDeplorables20, you can get 20% off your order. And also sign up for her newsletter to get all sorts of special deals, features, and some giveaways.
And you'll also get a sneak peek of what she's going to put in her shop next. So make sure you sign up for that. Okay. So, Devin, we're so excited to have you. We've talked about this for a while, on and off. I think I alluded to it. I think but you had some stuff going on, and so finally things are getting better, calming down, and we can get together. So that's exciting. Why don't you give us a little bit of background? You're a designer, tell us how you got into this.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Devin Ventry of Knitty McPurly. You can find me online at Knitty McPurly on Instagram and on my website, knittymcpurly.com. I've been designing since 2017, and I started designing because my husband said to me, the time is going to come and in 2017, I had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and then I would have to do the math to figure out how the other ones were. But, it was kind of moving toward okay, at some point, we're going to have to pay for them to go to school, and we're going to need you to contribute. And so I thought, how can I avoid the cubicle? That's my whole goal in joining the knitting community, is to just avoid the cubicle. I didn't want to go back to work at a job for someone else on their time and on their terms. And so I thought, I can kind of start like a 10-year plan. So I started that in 2017, thinking that if I can make a business out of this in 10 years, then I can, contribute to the family in a way that I like. And doing something that, because I have my sights set on like a yarn store, I can kind of be moving toward that. So that's what got me into it from the beginning.
That's very cool. I didn't realize that you started, because I put my first design out at the end of 2018. So you were probably already pretty established by then. Because I know when I started, I was looking at you and I was like, oh, wow, Knitty McPurly. She's like so cool. And then, I think I had assumed that you had been doing it for longer. So that's really neat. But,
well, I started podcasting in 2016, so that might be why. But I feel like I kind of stumbled into the name Knitty McPurly, which has a ring to it. I think it just sounds really good, and it sounds like, ooh, that sounds like somebody who's got their stuff together. Whether I do or not, it sounds like I do.
Sometimes that's all that matters, is just, the illusion that you might know what you're doing.
Yep.
But that's cool. So you've been designing for almost 4 years now, right?
Mm-hmm.
About 4 years.
Yeah.
And did you know what you wanted to do? Did you have a plan for what kind of things you like to design? Because I am firmly in the hats camp. I will design other things on occasion, but generally if I'm going to put something out, it's a hat. Did you know you wanted to get into sweaters and shawls and the whole range?
I had my sights set on the big time, I wanted to be one of those big time people. Little did I know that I would not be allowed to be. But I was kind of slowly, incrementally getting there. And I was thinking, I have to lay the groundwork for that. So I just kind of did one thing after another and just tried to learn as much as I could and branch out as much as I could with different, sweater constructions and shawl constructions and techniques and things. But I'd say that was my biggest goal, is I want to make a career out of this. So what do I need to do that?
Especially doing so many sweater patterns, when sweaters, you have to get the fit right. You have to get the different sizes right. A hat can basically fit anyone, but a sweater, you have to kind of study at how is this going to fall when you wear it? Is this going to be a more wearable item or not? So yeah, that's a lot of math.
Yes, it was a lot of math. And I'm not naturally a math person, but I found that I really like spreadsheets, and designing, you can do it all in a spreadsheet. And it's just so fun to like plug the numbers in and watch them all, and so it's really fun. It's really fun.
That's really cool. So you alluded to it, that you had aspirations of being, the next Caitlin Hunter or one of those sweater people that we all know the names of, but you're not allowed to. So what exactly happened with that?
So I was back in I think it was 2018, early 2018. My first sweater pattern was a children's pattern. It was the little Gigi cardigan. And that was chosen by what was then called Mason-Dixon Knitting. They've since changed their name to the more politically correct Modern Day Knitting, I think is what it stands for now. But okay, yeah, they did like a March Madness. Like, I guess it was supposed to be like basketball. I don't know. I don't follow sports, but where they'd choose these patterns, and then you'd vote, and it kept getting narrowed down and down and down. And my little Gigi got picked for that. And that was the first thing that kind of like put my little pattern over in the corner of the internet. It put it kind of on the map. And so I was able to get some contacts, and I started working with other designers and magazines. And, I was kind of plugged into some of the bigger name podcasters. And I was still, just slow, like, it was slow. I wasn't expecting a meteoric rise or anything. You can only do what you can do, but it was going really well. And then in 2019, I don't exactly remember when it started, but it started with the fringe supply lady. Does anybody remember her name? She wanted to go to India.
Yeah.
She wrote this totally normal thing about how excited she was to go and how it was this exotic place, and she just was so pumped about this trip, and everyone decided that she must be a racist, and she's out of business now.
I didn't realize that they actually got her out of business. That's crazy.
The reason I know that is because I went to look up the bags to see if I could still buy one, and no, she's out of business. And when that happened, I think we were all kind of like, that's weird. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. She's clearly not a racist. It was clearly a totally normal thing to say in her blog article. And then after that, people started attacking Maria Tuscan and Nathan Taylor, the sockmatician.
Yeah, that seems to have been a flashpoint for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really was. And I still feel bad that I didn't stick up for them then. Not that I was anybody. I mean, not that anyone would have cared, but for my own moral rightness, like, I should have done that. I should have said, why are you picking on them? Like, they didn't do anything. They did absolutely zero things. There's no reason to ruin their career. And I mean, poor Nathan, he had like a mental breakdown. It was just meanness for the sake of meanness. And so this was all kind of percolating in my mind. And then I think it was June of 2019 was when Ravelry put out any support for Donald Trump is, and I want to say they used a word like unequivocally, it's like unequivocally support for white supremacy. And that was such nonsense. It didn't make any sense. And it was like a slap in the face to, I feel like, half the country. I mean, right? Isn't half the country conservative and right-leaning and just normal people who lead normal lives? And to call that many people white supremacists on what basis? I don't even know. And so I thought about what to do about that. And I'm very like reactive and explosive. I think I come across more, I don't know, calmer and sweeter than I actually am in real life. I'm not that calm or sweet. But my first reaction was to fly off the handle and write some, big blog article. And my husband was like, okay, simmer down now, like just settle. You don't need to do that. So what I ended up doing was pulling my patterns off of Ravelry very quietly. I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just pulled them down. And as soon as I did that, it severed a couple of working relationships. And I even said to the people who I was working with, because this just came out of nowhere, like I had, deals with people. And so I said, look, we have this deal that we're working together. And if you don't feel comfortable with me just pulling my patterns off Ravelry, like if that makes you feel weird, I'd be happy to wait a year. I would do that just because we had a deal. But people dropped me like a hot potato at that moment. They were done with me, didn't want to have anything to do with me anymore. And that was painful because I didn't get it. Like, I have my own views, but I am interested in everyone and I like other people. And the more different you are from me, probably the more interested I am in you. Like my husband's like, if there's a room, with 100 people in it and one woman is wearing a hijab, is that what it's called? The Muslims wear the hijab. If one woman's wearing a hijab, that's the woman that I've gone to talk to. Like, he's like, you're always talking to the most interesting person in the room, the one who's like just different from me, like I don't know anything about you. I want to get to know you. So for people to say to me, you and I have different political views, so we can't work together, talk, be friends, anything, I just don't understand.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest. Nobody wants to be called a white supremacist. Like, I think that the way everything was handled was done very poorly, but I think that was the biggest problem with the whole situation is that, you guys know nothing about me and you've decided to paint me with this brush just because I don't agree with everything you say. That's really, that was the hard.
Yeah,
I totally get it.
I think that's something too that really, it was definitely a slap in the face to a lot of people. I mean, at the time, I was, I'm on Instagram and I follow knitting things, but it's just a minor account, and it was a massive, massive slap in the face. And I feel like a lot of people who this was the first, kind of public slander of them that they have personally felt from a knitting company, that this was a huge, it's a huge insult. It's a huge lie. It's a huge equivocation of two separate things. And also, down the line, it has broken people up that you must be on this side or that side. You can't be friends. And it's shocking. It's terrible.
No, and so I think I missed your canceling because I was also in the midst of my own thing. And so that's what I've discovered with a lot of people. Like, we had Potions Yarn on. I never realized that she was canceled. And there's just many people that it was happening to, but you kind of get wrapped up in what's going on with you and you miss the other stuff.
No, I totally get it. Well, that was like the first wave of the canceling because that was kind of just silent and behind the scenes. Happily, the people who I was working with who dropped me just dropped. Like, they didn't slander me. They didn't, make a big deal out of it. They just dropped me and walked away.
They didn't do a simpering Instagram post about how you're awful, but they don't deal with you anymore.
Right. I'm thankful for that. Yeah. Because I know, Deplorable, you got the full spotlight shown on you. And I know Maria did and Nathan did. And that, I don't think I could have stood up to that. So I really feel grateful for the way it was all kind of quiet. But after that, it was February of 2020, and I went back on my Instagram today to look because I didn't remember when this happened. And it was when Andre Sue Knits put out on Instagram, like, I want to stand up for Maria and Nathan, and I want to stand up for these people who've been canceled because that's wrong. What you did was wrong. And I thought, wow, you know what? If she has the courage to do it, then so do I. So, and that is when I did that at the same time. I put that out there, and I went back and read what I wrote on that post. It was, I was posting the Round Rabbit video where she's, more liberal, but I thought she was great. Like I loved her views, even if we didn't agree on everything, who cares, I just liked what she said about how this canceling and this, we can't talk to each other anymore because we don't agree. That's so dumb. Like, why are you ruining people's lives for no reason and ruining their businesses? So when I came out publicly with that, I was then more publicly dropped, but still by then I kind of felt like the heat was off. It wasn't like it was back in 2019. I mean, that was just that was terrible. So then I was more publicly dropped. But it's funny, I had someone message me who's a more high profile person between these two things, after I pulled my patterns off Ravelry, but before I came out publicly. And she said, I noticed your patterns aren't on Ravelry anymore. She's like, what's that about? And I just said, well, I just thought it was wrong that they said, support for the sitting president is white supremacy. I just thought that was wrong. And her response was, well, I don't feel that way. And I said, I know, that's fine. I'm okay with that. And I can't remember what she said after that specifically, but the gist of it was, I'm done with you. Like that's it. Our friendship is over. Everything is over. And it's funny because I've messaged that person a few times since then, just for different reasons. And they just total ghosted. I'm totally ghosted. They act like I don't exist anymore.
You're a non-person now because of it.
That's right.
Because you dare to not think exactly the same as them. And that's the part that kills me. Like, that's what made our country, is people with different viewpoints and different ideals coming together. And so this, if you don't agree with us, we can't, they don't want to know anything different, I guess, is the issue. But that's so discouraging.
Well, and more recently, I was trying to think about my canceling and just how it's kind of affected me. And I really do feel like I've been kind of covered in bubble wrap, in the sense that I've not had personal threats. No one has come out and said, oh, Devin's so terrible. And so that's been really nice. But there was an instance where this big name yarn store, really big yarn store, found my Faucette pattern. And they were like, we love this. They put kits together for it. They were, and that happened. And I was like, oh, wow, how nice. This was after I had been kind of canceled. And then I was messaging back and forth saying, thank you for, choosing my sweater. And, they were very nice. And then the next day, gone, done, no mention of it, unperson.
So somebody must have told them that you were undesirable and therefore not worth the kits.
Exactly. Someone said, and I've looked online. I'm like, is it written somewhere? Or are these people just like, is this like backdoor dealing? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
is
whatever.
Your name written on the knitting bathroom wall of the internet?
I'm sure that it is. I don't know where that is, but I'm sure it's on there.
That's nuts. So you were canceled. Did it affect your followers and your numbers, or?
It did, yes. When I did the public post supporting Round Rabbit and everyone who'd been canceled, I lost maybe 200 followers. I mean, it wasn't that significant, but since then, as you guys know, we have to work within our lane now. Now we're in our own channel, in our own lane, and this is where we work. And, I don't know. It's tough because I want to support other people. Like, I want to like everyone, but they don't like me. And my husband's always like, why do you care? And why do you try? Like, just let it go. They don't like you, move on. I'm like, okay, I guess, but why don't they like me? I'm nice.
And it does it prevents you from further growth as well. That, you can't get featured on large knitting publications if they're not going to associate you. So it's like, well, doesn't necessarily, bring your shop down. Well, it prevents you from advancing, which, you can't quantify what might have been if you had not been canceled that way. So that's really difficult too.
Yeah. But, I'm a Christian and I believe in everything happening for a reason and God is in control. And, the small amounts of suffering that we have on earth, we can unite that to the suffering of Jesus. And, not that being canceled is suffering, but I mean, it does hurt your business and it makes you feel bad. And you just get that moment like, what about me? And of course, this is ridiculous because it has nothing to do with me, but what about me would make anyone say that I'm a white supremacist? Like, how crazy is that?
Yeah. It's hard to understand when they're targeting you.
Hmm.
Like before I was removed from Ravelry, I was called a homophobe, a xenophobe, a transphobe, and I mean, Anne knows my deal, but like one of my best friends is an immigrant from Africa, and one of my cousins is a female to male trans, and it's I don't dislike them any. I don't dislike them because of their life choices. They're my family. They're my friends. But nobody. It's really hard when they don't know you and they're just putting these things on you, and they like to use those phrases because how can you prove that you're not a white supremacist? There's really not anything you can do to show that you're not a racist, you're not a homophobe, you're not a because once they've given you that title, like what can you do? And I think that that's why they work the way they do.
Hmm.
But
And they've also put, not if you are not a racist, you must subscribe to what we say not a racist is in exactly this line. And if you move out of that slightly, they
Racist.
don't know. Right. If it's not a racist is just this, and you have to repeat what we say right here. And just like you say, well, actually not a racist is quite a wide range of no, not a racist is just this. It's kind of the redefining what you have to do to prove that you're not a racist. It's public confessional of specific ideals. Like, this wasn't at the time of the Ravelry canceling, but later with BLM, you had to post the black square, but later you had to post the black square, but not the hashtag, but later you have to reaffirm when this happens or that happens, or you're not proven enough to be.
Or it's just performative, and then you're back in the boat of, well, I guess I'm a racist again. Like,
Hey,
there's not a
you're
whole lot you can
performative,
do.
but I'm not performative. But
Yeah, the whole thing, it's really, I don't know. I've come to the point where I feel sorry for these people that so my kids are small, and so I talk to them a lot about politics, but I try to keep it on their level because they're not that old. And I, I I think I got to the root of it with them the other day, and I was telling them that the problem nowadays is that people have chosen not to follow God, and so therefore they have trouble with rules and with different things because they live these lives where there's nothing's holding them accountable, and that I think that's why we have so much trouble. I could be totally wrong, but it seems like if you have a kid and you don't make it have a bedtime, then it's going to start pushing against other things and pushing against it's I don't know. Do you guys know what I'm trying to say? Like,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I think that a lot of our trouble comes down to the fact that people don't want to follow the
Rules of Christianity
well,
or
not even
or
just rules of
Western society.
Christianity, just yeah, they want to make up their own stuff, and if you tell them it's wrong or you don't agree, then instead of searching inside themselves, like when somebody told you you're a racist, I bet you felt bad and you looked at yourself and you said, what have I done anything? What have I know that the president following Trump isn't making me racist, but have we have self-reflection, whereas these people don't want to hear they're doing anything wrong, so they just shout at you louder.
Right.
I don't know.
But I think that kind of all that BLM, you're a racist, all of that is the religion. You might call it like the religion of leftism, where like and it's similar, when you're cast into the outer darkness, like we are. Um, I feel like I'm kind of talking around it, kind of like you, where it's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is, but it has rules like a religion. and if you don't follow them, you're out. And and it does have like a moral high ground feeling. Like my husband and I were talking about that recently, about how people who are, on that far left, they think that we're stupid and we're not morally good. They think that we're morally bad. And I'm like, wow, I can't understand. I don't get it.
Well, that's something that I've said several times on our show, but it's that as a conservative, you can look at a person and like the person and think they have bad ideas. Whereas when you're a leftist, you can look at the person and you think they're a bad person because they have bad ideas that you don't agree with. That's the fundamental difference between the two groups, is that we can still say, hey, I bet you're a good person. You've been misled. I kind of want to help you. And they're like, you're Satan. Get away from me because you don't agree. So
Yeah.
Anyway, but I did not mean to derail us. It's just one of those things. Because I still struggle with what have I done specifically as a person that makes you dislike me? It's a hard thing, even though there are people out in the internet and I know it doesn't matter, but it still bothers me. And I think that's normal.
I want to be liked. Like,
yeah.
and you feel like if someone doesn't like you, there has to be a reason, like a real reason. But yeah, I think that you hit on it, that if you don't think like them, you're just a bad person. You're just deplorable and you're not worthy of, air and life and space.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's bring it back to something happier.
Cancer.
Well, I wasn't going to go to cancer yet, but I guess that we
I'm kidding. Pick your happy thing.
No, I don't know if I have a happy thing. Do you have a happy thing, Anne?
Well, if you wanted to talk about cancer, from one. So I have a bit of a feeling that one was more impactful than the other.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so I went for my very first mammogram ever back in September of 2020. And I was like, whatever, I'm going for a mammogram. And the lady's like, they probably will call you back, but don't worry, that happens a lot. And I said, okay. So I was like, fine. So then I go back, a couple of weeks later, and at the mammogram, like the mammogram lady says, we need to take you for an ultrasound. And so I go for the ultrasound right there. And these are like, they're not doctors, they're not surgeons, but these lower level tech people were like, this is cancer. I was like, oh, okay. So, you can't really take that in. Like, it takes time for that to sink in. I still don't feel like that has sunk in. And it's funny because so that happened. And then I went to see the surgeon, and that day that I got the biopsy and I saw the surgeon, it was my husband's birthday. And he was on a plane. He got up at 4:00 that morning and he was on a plane to Alabama because his uncle died. So he spent the whole day at a funeral in Alabama, and we live in Virginia. And as he's in the airport, I'm like, hi, I have cancer. Happy birthday.
No. Happy birthday. Sorry you were at a funeral. There's cancer. Like, yes. Great. Good day.
Yeah. So this year was a significantly better birthday since after that. But yeah, so then I had a month after that, right around Thanksgiving, I had a double mastectomy. And then right after Christmas, I started chemo, and I did chemo for 3 months. And that's terrible. Chemo is the worst. Like, they go in and they look at the cancer and say, how bad is it? How aggressive is it? And if it's not that aggressive, then they're like, well, we got it all. We'll give you pills for hormone therapy for 5 or 10 years and you'll be good to go. But mine was super aggressive. So I had to have this chemo, and that was awful. Nightmares, like just the constant pain, nausea, all the stuff. My hair fell out. I lost my fingernails, like just things you just don't think about.
I know that could happen.
Yeah, I knew that it could happen, but I thought it wasn't that common. And they actually didn't start to fall off until like the summer. So I finished Chemo in March, but they didn't start to fall out until like June or July. So yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving. But the good news is that I'm completely done with my treatment. I mean, not totally, I'm completely done with all of the really bad treatment. I'm still doing hormone therapy, which is just a pill that I have to take every day that it makes my body hurt. So I've been kind of jumping off around on these different medicines to see which one works best. But, you know, like I said about now this is where like Christian suffering actually applies. It's a good thing to not be too comfortable. And it's a good thing to have pain that reminds us that, we're Christians and we're here on this earth for a short amount of time. And whatever we can offer up now is for the good of others and the good of ourselves later on. So it's all good, that's what it is.
That's crazy. And so while you were doing all of that, because you decided to start yarn dyeing in the midst of your pattern designing and your business and your chemo, because that makes sense, right?
I don't really know how that happened. I think I just don't sit still very well. Like I don't like to not be busy. And so I didn't put pressure on myself. I just did what I could do. And with the yarn dyeing, it was a distraction. I really started, like I had thought about it for a while before, and I had been kind of planning it, but I started the, boots on the ground in January when my chemo started. And I would plan my shop updates around my chemo because the first week would be terrible. I'd be completely down. And then I would slowly start to feel better. And then there's a few days where you feel really good. So I'd get as much done as I could. And then I'd, have my next treatment. And it was great because I had the ability to learn something new during that time, which I recommend. I don't know. Not everybody's like me. We joke like my mom is just, she's a total introvert and she's never doing anything. And I'm like, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? No, I'm busy. And I'm like, doing what, Mom? Like, you're not doing anything. But that's just my personality. Like, I need to keep doing things. I need to be busy. So, yeah, it's been really great. And I feel like my shop has gone in a really great direction. I don't talk politics in my knitting, even though I think all the, leftier people know that I'm canceled and not to associate with me. And there are a couple who still will, not big name people, but just regular people who I know are more liberal in their real life, but they're normal human beings. And so they'll still be my friend, which is always nice. I love when that happens. But chemo brain is real. Let me tell you, I was a little nervous about this podcast because I prepare things ahead of time and I didn't exactly know. I mean, I knew generally what we were going to talk about, but I didn't know the exact questions you were going to ask. Sorry. And my brain, no, that's fine. My brain just doesn't work very well anymore. Like it's very slow. So I did kind of, take some notes ahead of time, but yeah.
Yeah, Anne and I tend to be, Anne has notes. I never have notes. And so like when I'm in charge, it's just kind of like, we're going to see what happens. So sorry, that's how I roll though. And like I'm having surgery in a couple of weeks. Although when you guys are watching this, it will be done and I will be resting.
Oh, yay.
But like I need to be like cleaning up the house and stuff, but I will like get into a project and then like everything else falls away. And I think my husband's more like you, where he's like, all right, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but I saw a fluffy dog over there. I got to go see what's happening. Like there's not much planning in this world. Yeah.
No, and I think I seem like more of a planner than I actually am. I sometimes just kind of throw it together and go. Yeah. That's, because who cares? I mean, why not?
It's not going to hurt anything, generally speaking.
In the world of knitting, it's not going to hurt anything. It's not brain surgery.
No, it sure isn't.
I was going to comment that I don't know exactly when these were introduced to your shop, but you have your patterns, you have your yarn dyeing, but you also have some really lovely stitch marker necklaces that you promote. And I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you were saying how you were making an effort to have no slave labor in what you have for the stitch markers, that either made in America or made in another country where, you know, slave labor is not a thing.
Right.
But it is very important to you to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, I'm an American living in 2021, and so what that means, and we all know, is that we buy stuff that's made with slave labor all the time, and we don't necessarily know that. We don't get the details on exactly where that thing came from. But I wanted the stuff that I sold specifically to not be stained by any kind of bad behavior. You know what I mean? Like, that's just pure evil. So I was able, and it took me a long time. Like, I cleared out the stock that I had of, you know, because I used to put the necklaces together myself, and I would get the parts from wherever. I don't know. You really don't know where they came from, but it was very difficult for me to find a company that manufactures in the US. So when I did, and this company that I'm working with now is just really great. I'm so happy with the products. The necklaces are just beautiful, and they cost more, which I expected to happen. But the quality is, they're amazing. I'm really happy about it. And I'm happy to not be contributing, at least as a seller. You know, as a consumer, I buy stuff on Amazon too. And when I'm my best self, I say a little prayer for that person who made it. But, you know, sadly, I don't think about it all that often. But anyway, when shopping at my shop, there's no slave labor involved, except for, like, if my children help me, that's the only slave labor that I participate in.
I was about to mention that you've had your kids dye some yarn with you before too. So, you know, a little bit of underage labor, but not for the whole thing.
Yeah, but that's completely different. Let me tell you, when I had big orders of shirts and tote bags and stuff, I absolutely made my kids help me, like, stuff envelopes. I think
family
that's
business.
acceptable. Yes.
Yes. Well, and my kids are like, getting to dye yarn is like the greatest thing ever. I mean, I'll I'll be down dyeing, and they'll come down and be like, "Can we dye yarn?" And I'm like, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to let kids dye yarn, because you know, you have to control the environment for them, because you can't have them digging in the dye, and, you know, like, there's dangers involved, and so I have to control it. But it's a lot more work for me to have them dye yarn. So it would be a whole commitment for me to do that on a regular basis.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So are your yarns, do you source them from, like, the US, or do you get them? It'd be helpful if I could speak in a sentence. I know that a lot of yarn dyers get their yarn from, like, the UK and Turkey, in addition to the US. Do you do the same kind of things, or you try to? Okay.
Yeah. Yarn is easier to find from South America, especially. A lot of yarn comes from South America, or the US. But basically, there are a few countries that we just avoid. You know, and luckily with yarn, they're not big yarn producers, so that's much easier to do.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You're right, though. It's funny. My husband and I were shopping for an office chair for him, and we were trying to find one that was made in the US, and I thought we did, and then the box came and it said it was made in the PCR, and I'm like, for real? Like, I thought that we didn't, like, we were specifically, he's like, I will spend more money, I will, and it still came from there, and it's like,
that happened to me. That happened to me a couple times with the necklaces, where I'd go to a site that said, "Oh, you know, our stuff comes from Canada," or whatever. And so I was like, "Oh, great," you know. And then in more talking with them, I'd say, "Well, I'm looking for this. Do you have this kind of thing?" And they'll say, "Well, we can source it for you." I'm like, well, what does that mean? I thought you were manufacturing them in Canada. They're like, no, we sourced from other places. I was like, oh, okay. And I think that, you know, there were some things that they had that came from Canada, but not everything. And that's, even this company that I use, they're very upfront about it. Some things are made in the USA and some are not. I think it's mostly made in the USA. Everything in my shop is made in the USA. But they're very upfront about which pieces are and which aren't. And other places, they want to kind of play both sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's another disadvantage to buying things online now that, when you're in person, you can turn it upside down.
Right.
And on a website, it's like pulling teeth trying to figure out where it's from.
It is. And even my husband, love the man to death, but he will tell me the same thing 100 times. And so every night when we're watching TV, there's this one commercial about trucks that comes on, and it says like assembled in Michigan from foreign parts. And every single time that commercial comes on, he's like, look at the fine print. And I'm like, yes, honey, I still see it every time. But that's what they do. They make it sound like, oh yeah, that's from it. But it's not really.
Yeah, and there's so many company names too that it'll be like, something USA, and you're like, it's not really USA though. You just put that on your, English website. I know your
I see what you're trying to pull here. Yeah, it's crazy. So I wanted to ask you, going back to when you were in your treatment, what did you do when you were going through chemo with your kids? I mean, you homeschool.
Oh, gosh. I have the greatest friends on the planet. My one friend, so I always had my treatments on a Tuesday. So I would plan out the week for that week, and we would do Monday, and then she would come Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and she would homeschool them for me those 3 days.
Wow.
Then on Friday, my husband's sister, who has 2 kids that are the same age as 2 of mine, would take them for the weekend. So then they would come back Sunday night when I was starting to feel better. And it depends, some weeks, the next week I was feeling well enough that I could get back into it. And other weeks it would take me a couple days, but we ended that year on time. Wow. I just had a lot of help. They're just the greatest people ever who helped me out. I mean, so many of my friends, they brought me meals. We didn't cook for like 6 months. People brought us meals for, the time from the surgery through the chemo. It was really awesome.
That is really awesome. When you're talking about it, last year was my first year homeschooling, so we did not finish on time. I had no idea what I was doing, but I'm only going to be down a couple weeks, and I already have my lessons planned out, and I think my mother is going to teach the kids when I'm not feeling well. But I can't imagine like having to plan it for such a long period of time. That's just...
Well, with chemo, you don't always feel terrible. There's a time where you feel really, really terrible, but then there's the time after that where you're like, okay, I can plan next week. Because I didn't plan it all, out. But also I've been using a boxed curriculum, because I've been homeschooling for a long time, like 13 years. And I used to kind of pick and choose stuff, but I switched to one that's done for me, and it's just so much easier. It's just like, yes, why didn't I do this from the beginning?
That's cool. That's what I do too. Because I know myself, because I will find something that's interesting to me and I will forget to lesson plan and stuff. If it wasn't in books, then people saying, okay, week 8, day 4, this is what you're going to do, I wouldn't do it. So
yep.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, me too.
It's interesting.
Sorry, that you also mentioned on your website that a certain amount of your proceeds go to a food pantry in Virginia.
Yeah, I really wanted to give to a charity that I thought was really important, but would be one that was kind of politically neutral. There's a lot of charities that I like, but I started doing that during the pandemic because the amount of people who were, seeking food at the food pantry just went up so much at that time. And so I think it's called some kind of a meal plan where I buy into it every month, and it's like, I donate, this a certain dollar amount every month. And then, I kind of figured, well, this is about how much I bring in every month. So about this much of your whatever you purchase goes to the food bank. So, that's just, I just really like doing that.
Sure.
That's nice. And it's nice to keep it somewhat local too, because sometimes when you give to big charities, I mean, not that it's not going to people in need, but it's nice to kind of know you're helping in your own community, which
Right.
is.
And I like that when I go look at what the charities other people support. I would love that if someone was supporting their local food bank. I mean, that's money to food to people. Like there's no, there's not a lot of corporate people in between there.
Not funding a lot of bureaucracy. So you have some lovely sweaters behind you.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Was there any yarns or things that you would like to show us today, or?
I did not bring anything. This is just kind of my upstairs backdrop, figuring that it looks better than just my dresser. But this is the Inverness Pullover, which is kind of my favorite right now because it's it has the slim sleeves and it's wider in the middle. Mm-hmm. And I'm a little wider in the middle these days, so I'm like, I'm really feeling that silhouette. This is the brass tacks cardigan, which is really fun. It's got a little fun detail on the bottom there, and also on the sleeves. And this one behind me is the Potomac cardigan. And I have this pattern in a fingering weight, which is this one, and a worsted weight. This one is based off of a sewing pattern called the Blackwood cardigan. And it's just a great sewing pattern. I thought, wouldn't it be fun to make something similar that's a knitting pattern? So, yeah.
That's pretty. I think that's the one that I often put in my cart and take out of my cart because I don't actually knit sweaters, but I want to knit that sweater, but I try to be realistic. I still have, I test knit for you last year and I still have like 3 inches that I need to finish. I've never finished that sweater.
Was that the Potomac worsted that you test knit?
No, I tested your Audrey sweater.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it'd be really great if I could wear it, if I would just finish the last, because you wrote it as cropped, and I think that's how long I knit it. And then I was like, I'll never wear a crop sweater. I need to keep going. And I just.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the only time I wear it is over a dress or if I have like a shirt underneath it, because I'm 43 and I have 4 children. I mean, that ship has sailed.
That's funny. And the sweater you have on, is that one you designed too?
I sewed this.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what it's called. I don't even remember the designer.
Well, it's very pretty.
Well, thanks. It's too hot for a sweater today. So.
Yeah. Well, through the computer, it's hard to tell. It looked like it could have been like a fuzzy, I can't tell what you got.
Yeah, it's double gauze. It's double gauze, so it's got like a texture to it.
Yeah. So. Do you have anything else you want to tell us about that we didn't think to ask you?
I'll be honest with you. People say things to me like, how was your weekend? And I'm like, I can't remember. In fact, I told my kids, I'm like, you are not allowed to start any questions with, do you remember? Because the answer is no, I don't remember. So
that's funny.
If I did have anything, I don't know.
Well, then that means we hit all the high points too, because, if we miss anything glaring, you'd probably have it written down.
Yeah.
So
those were the 3 main things that I had written down. So
cool.
Thanks so much for inviting me. This was super fun.
Yeah. I'm glad that it finally worked out because it's been a while that we've been, I think I alluded to it and then we talked about it and then we finally did it. So that's nice.
Well, and I kept thinking, sometime in the future that will happen. But then I'm like, well, maybe the future should arrive.
Yeah. I know you said you were busy, but I figure we did a podcast this weekend with Amy from Two Sisters and Some Yarn. Mm-hmm. And we're going to put that out after I have surgery. And then we're going to put yours out after that so that I'm going to have like 3 weeks off where I don't have to do any editing. I figure hopefully by then I'll be feeling better. Right, Anne?
Right.
Because even if it's not that bad, because I've heard that it can go one of 2 ways. It can be like okay, or it can be really bad. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to milk it because my husband,
you should.
I don't think he knows what I do. So I think that if I let him be in charge for a while, it'll be okay.
Yeah, definitely. You should definitely do that.
We'll see if I can. I'm kind of, I don't know if I can, but So anyway, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. You can find Devin at knittyMcPurly.com and on Instagram as Knitty McPurly, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and over on YouTube, you can find my podcast, the Knitty McPurly podcast.
Yep. It's a nice little, she talks way more knitting than we do. So if that's your cup of tea, make sure you check it out. And for us, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Parler, MeWe, Vero, Gab, Telegram, YouTube, and Rumble. So make sure you find us wherever you prefer to be. And make sure you check out our sponsor, Chicken Lady Fiber Arts. She has fabulous yarns. And if you use our code PIK Deplorables20, you'll get 20% off your order. And if you sign up for her newsletter, she's got deals and previews and all different things. So make sure you check her out at chickenladyfiberarts.com. And thanks for joining us.